Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere warm, far from the hum of traffic and glowing screens. Imagine soft sand under your bare feet, the sun rising like a lazy ember over the Indian Ocean, and the salty smell of fish already hanging in the air. You've just arrived in a Malagasy coastal village, centuries before French colonization, when the island still hummed to its own slow rhythms of tides, trade winds, and distant drums. You probably won't survive this, at least not without some serious sunscreen made from crocodile dung. Yes, that was an actual thing people tried, and no, you probably don't want to try it now. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you falling asleep in New York or just waking up in Perth? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off the creaking canoe onto warm sand, the kind that squeezes between your toes and reminds you you're far from home. The morning sun hasn't burned yet, it just paints everything in gold. The villagers greet you with easy smiles, curious glances, and a few restrained giggles because, well, you don't exactly blend in. Their houses stand light and airy on stilts, woven from bamboo and palm, angled toward the sea breeze that never seems to stop flowing here. Someone presses a coconut into your hands before you can even ask. The water inside tastes faintly sweet, like a secret the ocean keeps to itself. Chickens dart around your ankles, kids shriek with laughter as they chase a runaway crab, and somewhere behind you, a drum beats softly, not for ceremony, just because rhythm belongs to every hour here. Historians still argue whether coastal communities like this relied more on fishing or inland trade for their livelihoods, but today, at least, it feels like everything revolves around the water. The smell of drying fish wafts from a rack nearby, mingling with hints of crushed cloves and tamarind paste. You overhear someone mention a ship passing days ago, flying a flag you've never seen. Pirates? Maybe. Or just traders from Arabia, or even sailors from as far as Java. After all, Madagascar has always been a crossroads, where Austronesian seafarers and African migrants swapped not just goods, but stories, genes, and cooking tricks. One old man claims his grandfather swore he once tasted rice from India brought by a shipwrecked crew. Nobody believes him, but they don't exactly dismiss it either. As you wander closer to the water, you notice long, narrow canoes bobbing like resting fish themselves, carved from single logs, their sides polished from decades of salt spray. A few men mend nets with a patience you can't imagine having, knot after knot, as if time simply bends to the will of their hands. A young boy asks if you've ever seen a zebu up close, the iconic humped cattle of the island. You nod politely, but he doesn't buy it. Not our zebus, he says proudly, promising they're different here, almost magical. The sun climbs higher, and you realize you're sweating already, but nobody else seems to mind. A group of women laugh as they smear a yellow paste on their faces, protection from the sun made from ground tree bark. It smells vaguely of sandalwood and seaweed, and you can't help wondering if it works better than the imaginary crocodile dung sunscreen you joked about earlier. Maybe you should ask for some before you burn to a crisp. At the far end of the beach, near a stand of palms leaning like old storytellers, a gathering forms. The village elder, wrapped in a faded but regal lamba cloth, speaks slowly, welcoming you in a language that flows like water over smooth stones. Someone translates. You're welcome to share their food, their shade, and their stories, as long as you remember that everything here belongs first to the ancestors. Even the breeze, they say, is borrowed. That thought sticks with you as the ocean laps at your ankles. The ancestors are everywhere, humming in the wind, glimmering in the waves, watching from the forests inland. And yet, for all that unseen weight, life feels light, buoyant, carried on laughter, and the promise of the day's catch. You breathe deeper than you have in weeks, letting the sound of gulls and gentle surf nudge you closer to the village's quiet heartbeat. Tomorrow might bring trade, tales of far-off storms, or even those rumored pirates. But for now, you're just another visitor under the sun, learning how to walk slow, breathe easy, and listen to a world that never learned the word rush. You shuffle into the heart of the village, where smoke curls lazily from a central fire pit, carrying the mouth-watering scent of rice cooking in a clay pot. A group of women, their heads wrapped in bright scraps of cloth, crouch beside the flames, stirring with long wooden spoons that look older than most of the kids scampering nearby. Someone pats the woven mat next to them, and you sit cross-legged, knees cracking like a city dweller unused to this kind of ground-level dining. They hand you a bowl. The rice is slightly sticky, speckled with grains browned by the smoke. Beside it, a piece of river fish, charred on the outside, flakes apart as you touch it. It's richer than anything you've had in weeks, yet as simple as food can get. Fire, fish, salt, a hint of tamarind. One woman nudges you with a grin. Eat slowly. If you choke, the ancestors will scold us for bad hospitality. You laugh, but swallow carefully just in case. Mainstream historians often say Malagasy coastal diets were basic. Rice when possible, fish daily, roots and tubers for filler. But watching the cooks now, you know basic isn't the right word. It's balanced, practiced, an art passed through generations of taste buds and muscle memory. There's even a sprinkle of crushed wild pepper seeds tossed in last minute, adding a smoky kick that wakes you up more than any modern espresso shot could. Someone offers you what looks like a lump of dried seaweed, claiming it's a sleepy snack. You take a bite. It's chewy, salty, with an aftertaste like old leather boots that took a swim. Apparently, it's believed to calm nerves, especially before long canoe journeys. Historians still argue whether this is purely practical nutrition or an early example of food medicine, but either way, it's definitely memorable. As you eat, the conversation swirls around you. People chat about the tides, about a merchant rumored to be bringing iron spearheads from inland, about how the moon last night looked like a fish's belly, which must mean good luck for today's catch. Every so often, a chicken darts under the mat, hoping for scraps, and a toddler, not much older than the chicken, follows with the same mission. One man with a booming laugh tells you a story about a neighbor who once tried to cook rice without rinsing it first. Supposedly, the whole village refused to eat it, saying even the ancestors turned their noses up at such laziness. He swears you can still smell the burnt starch if you pass that man's old hut. The others groan, not because it's a bad story, but because it's the 5th time they've heard it this week. And then, just as you think you can't eat another bite, a woman ladles out a thick, nutty sauce made from ground peanuts and wild greens. You dip a piece of rice cake into it, and it tastes like roasted warmth, earthier than anything store-bought. She explains that the peanuts came from inland traders, part of a network crisscrossing the island long before the French even knew where Madagascar was on the map. You nod, half in admiration, half because your mouth is too full to talk. By the time the pot is scraped clean, you're leaning back on your hands, drowsy in the best way possible. The morning sun filters through the palm leaves, chickens have given up their scavenger hunt, and kids are already arguing over who gets to lick the last bits of fish oil from a bowl. You realize you've eaten more rice than you thought possible, and yet you're still trying to figure out how everyone else stayed so lean. Your host chuckles, handing you a gourd of water to wash it down. "City people," he says with mock pity. "One meal and you're ready to nap. We have nets to fix, water to fetch, stories to tell. You'll keep up soon enough." You grin sheepishly, knowing he's probably right. But for now, you just sit there, full, warm, surrounded by the comforting drone of conversation and the occasional squawk of a stubborn hen. If this was breakfast, what centuries ago was like, you think, maybe time travel isn't such a bad deal, assuming your stomach survives the rest of the week. Your host claps you on the shoulder and points toward a woven mat under a mango tree. Apparently, it's time to rest your food, which sounds like a polite way of saying don't pass out in public view. You shuffle over, stomach heavy but happy, and flop onto the mat. This, you're told, is where you'll be sleeping tonight, too. It's nothing like the plush mattress you left behind, just woven reeds, thin as a whisper, laid over packed earth. But it's surprisingly soft, springy under your weight, with the faint scent of dried grass and sun-warmed fibers. A curious little gecko watches from the tree trunk above you, blinking slowly as if judging your napping skills. The villagers pass by with amused glances. Outsiders never know how to lie on these mats properly. A woman gestures that you should curl on your side, knees bent like a shrimp. You try it. It's not bad, though you're pretty sure your hips will complain tomorrow. As twilight approaches, the day's warmth lingers, but the air cools enough to make you pull a light cloth over your shoulders. Somewhere near the edge of the village, frogs begin their slow, throaty chorus, a sound so steady it feels like the earth is humming. Crickets join in, clicking and rasping in unpredictable bursts. Then a low drumbeat from a neighboring hut adds a pulse beneath it all. It's not music in the modern sense, more like a heartbeat to sleep by. Mainstream historians note that these coastal communities often slept early, aligning their lives to sunrise and tide, not clocks. Lamps were few, candles costly, and night was the domain of ancestors and dreams. Yet, as you lie there staring at the faint shimmer of stars, it doesn't feel primitive, it feels deliberate, like someone decided that sleep deserves respect, not a rushed afterthought between work shifts. Just as your eyes start to close, a shriek cuts through the night. You jolt upright, only to see kids chasing a lemur that's stolen a piece of roasted yam. The whole scene dissolves into laughter, even from the adults pretending to scold the animal. One man mutters something about the lemur being an ancestral prankster, a trickster spirit who likes to test human patience. Whether that's genuine belief or a bedtime joke, you can't tell, but it makes you smile as you settle down again. And then you notice something odd. The village has no walls, no locked doors, no one standing guard. Historians still argue whether this was due to peace among nearby clans or sheer faith that the spirits would warn of danger. Either way, you feel strangely safe, cocooned in sound and starlight, like the island itself has wrapped you in its palm. The mat rustles as a breeze lifts the edge of your cover. You roll over and notice a woven charm hanging above your sleeping spot, a small bundle of leaves tied with fiber string. Your host explains softly that it's a fanafodi, a charm to keep away nightmares and wandering souls. Apparently, a traveler once ignored such protections and dreamt of a crocodile demanding repayment for an unpaid fish debt. You don't know whether to laugh or thank the charm profusely, so you do both. Hours slip by with no sense of time but the changing sounds outside. Frogs slow their chorus, replaced by the soft whoosh of palm fronds, then the distant call of a night bird that sounds like a creaking door. You drift in and out of sleep, wrapped in the strange comfort of this world. No street lights, no buzzing electronics, just the quiet rhythm of nature and people who've learned how to rest without rushing. When dawn edges over the horizon, you're not sure if you truly slept or simply floated in a dream. Either way, you wake feeling different, not exactly refreshed, but somehow lighter, as if the ancestors gave you permission to borrow one of their untroubled nights. You stretch, bones cracking, and watch smoke rise again from the central fire pit. Breakfast is already on the way, and for the first time since you arrived, you're not worried about whether you can keep up. You're starting to learn the rhythm here. One mat, one dream, one frog chorus at a time. The village wakes with the sun, not an alarm clock. Roosters start the chorus, but it's really the distant splash of paddles and the hollow thunk of wooden hulls against one another that nudges you upright. Today is a trading day, you're told, a time when canoes from nearby settlements gather in the lagoon to barter fish, rice, spices, and whatever else can change hands. You trudge to the shore barefoot, the sand cool under your feet after the night breeze. The lagoon looks like a living market, even from afar. Dugout canoes gliding like quiet fish, each with a distinct rhythm of paddle strokes. Some have little triangular sails patched from woven mats, billowing gently in the morning air. The smell hits first. Drying fish, sweet overripe fruit, and the sharp, almost metallic tang of fresh clipped cloves carried in baskets. As you wade closer to the water, you notice that the market stalls are just boats lined side by side, men and women crouched in them, passing goods across the narrow gaps or hauling items onto the sandy shallows. A young girl waves you over, excited to show off a heap of bright red chilies still glistening with dew. You've barely admired them before she offers a taste test. You decline politely. This early in the morning, your tongue might not forgive you. Historians say that centuries before European powers staked their claims on Madagascar, trading networks here stretched far and wide. Arab merchants, Swahili-speaking sailors, even whispers of Austronesian ties reaching back across the ocean. Yet what you see today feels more intimate than global commerce. People trade not just goods, but stories, greetings, and jokes. A fisherman boasts that his catch could feed the entire island if only someone had the rice to match it. Another merchant claims her clove buds are so fragrant they could charm a crocodile into behaving. Nobody buys that story, but everybody laughs. You spot a canoe laden with woven mats dyed in soft indigo and ochre patterns. Their seller explains that these come from inland artisans days away, brought here on foot before hitching onto a riverboat for the last leg of the journey. Each mat carries a faint scent of forest leaves and smoke, as if it remembers every mile traveled. And then, just as things feel calm and predictable, a rumor stirs the crowd. A merchant from the north swears he saw sails on the horizon yesterday. Not Malagasy sails, but a larger, foreign vessel. Pirates, perhaps, or traders from Oman, or maybe even a lost European ship. Nobody knows for sure. Historians still argue whether piracy was a consistent threat or more of a sailor's cautionary tale, but here the idea of pirates is less fearsome than exciting. People glance out toward the ocean with a mix of curiosity and "what could they possibly want here?" energy. While everyone speculates, an old man sidles up to you, balancing a basket of dried sea cucumbers on his hip. "Food for kings," he declares proudly, "or bait for idiots, depends who you sell it to." He winks, and you have to laugh. This market is part commerce, part theater. Deals are struck with grins and exaggerated haggling, a kind of performance meant to keep everyone entertained as much as supplied. You watch as clove buds are weighed with smooth stones, rice poured from one basket to another in careful arcs, fish displayed belly up to show off freshness. No money changes hands, only goods, promises, and nods of trust. Your host explains softly that in this part of the island, reputation is worth more than currency. Break a promise here, and you won't trade again for seasons. By midday, the sun beats down fiercely. The lagoon glitters like molten silver, and the market begins to thin. Canoes peel away one by one, hulls now heavy with whatever each trader managed to bargain for. A group of boys leap into the water, splashing wildly, laughing at your wide-eyed surprise when you realize they're chasing fish barehanded, adding a last-minute catch to their family's trade pile. As you walk back toward the village, carrying a small basket of tamarind fruit someone insisted you take, you can still hear the market's echoes: laughter, haggling, the slap of water against wood. It's a rhythm of life built not on speed or greed, but on tides, trust, and the belief that tomorrow's trade will bring new stories worth hearing. The sun hangs higher now, bright and relentless, and you're starting to wonder how anyone stays hydrated here. Your host waves you over, a grin already forming as he hands you a large clay pot tied to a woven sling. "Water run," he says, nodding toward the inland path. You try not to look like you'd rather nap, but he clearly knows city folks aren't used to errands that double as workouts. The path winds past thick clusters of pandanus trees, their roots twisting like sculptures, and the air smells of damp earth and wildflowers you can't name. At the village's edge, a group of women and children have already gathered, each carrying pots or gourds balanced effortlessly on their heads. You, on the other hand, cling to the sling awkwardly, half afraid you'll trip and create an accidental mudslide of clay shards and spilled water. The freshwater source is a little stream shaded by banana plants, its surface rippling gently, dragonflies dancing above. You crouch beside the others to fill your pot, realizing just how much patience goes into not scooping up half the riverbank with it. A woman chuckles softly and demonstrates. Dip slowly, tilt just right, keep the flow clean. You follow her lead, but your first attempt ends with a splash that soaks your knees. The kids find this hilarious, and honestly, you do too. Historians tell us that Malagasy coastal villages often depended on shared water sources like this, simple but communal, a space for gossip, songs, even matchmaking. You see it firsthand. While the pots fill, conversations swirl about the day's trade, a runaway zebu that nearly trampled a yam patch, and speculation about those rumored foreign sales. One older man swears that centuries ago, spirits taught humans to fetch water properly, and every splash is an insult to them. You glance at your damp knees and hope the spirits are forgiving today. The return trip is where things get real. These pots are heavier than they look. The locals stride ahead with perfect balance, pots high on their heads, hands free as they swat at flies or gesture mid-story. You trudge behind, clutching your pot with both arms, wobbling like a newborn giraffe. Someone jokes that maybe you should just drink all of it to lighten the load. You're tempted. Eventually, you make it back to the shore, forearms aching, but the lesson isn't over yet. Your host gestures toward the water, where a narrow dugout canoe bobs in the shallows. "Come," he says, handing you a paddle that looks more like a flat spoon than anything from modern boating gear. You clamber in cautiously, half expecting to tip the whole thing over. The canoe feels alive under your feet, rocking gently, as if it's waiting to see whether you're worthy of staying dry. You push off, trying to mimic the smooth, steady strokes of your companions. Instead, your paddle slaps the water like a flailing fish. The canoe lurches sideways, and you barely catch yourself from toppling in. The locals roar with laughter, not unkindly, but clearly delighted at this clumsy outsider trying to master what they learned before they could walk straight. Mainstream historical accounts say these dugouts were vital for fishing and short-range travel, some even venturing far out to sea when conditions were right. But what they don't capture is how deeply these canoes seem tied to personality and pride. Every notch in the wood tells a story: a journey upriver, a storm survived, a lucky fishing haul. One man taps the side of his canoe fondly, murmuring what might be a nickname for it. Your host claims some canoes have spirits of their own, and sailors leave offerings, a pinch of rice, a bit of smoke, to keep them friendly. Historians still argue whether this was superstition or just a poetic way of respecting their tools. You finally manage a few decent strokes, earning a mock cheer from the kids who've jumped into the water beside you, swimming faster than your canoe moves. They dive and surface, laughing, splashing, as if to remind you that paddling isn't just transportation, it's play, it's rhythm, it's life shaped by water. By the time you beach the canoe again, arms trembling, you're soaked, exhausted, and oddly exhilarated. The villagers grin as they take the paddle back, nodding with approval that feels more genuine than any modern-day gold star. You've fetched water, you've learned to paddle, sort of, and you've survived another part of this slow, timeless routine. Somewhere in the distance, a zebu bell jingles. The tide swells softly against the sand, and you can't help thinking, if survival here means carrying water and staying upright in a canoe, you might just make it another day. If your arms stop shaking first. By the time you've recovered from your canoeing adventure, you notice a small crowd forming near one of the huts, their voices soft but urgent. Curiosity pulls you closer, where you see a woven mat spread on the ground, bundles of leaves, strips of bark, clay pots, and a faint sweet smell like honey and damp soil. This is the healer's corner, you're told, a space where herbal knowledge and ancestral whispers meet. A woman, older than anyone else you've seen here, sits cross-legged, sorting through herbs with a focus that would silence a rowdy crowd. Her hair is streaked white, her fingers stained green from years of crushing leaves. She greets you with a knowing smile, as if she already knows you've never witnessed this kind of medicine before. Historians often write that Malagasy medicine was a blend of African, Austronesian, and local traditions, plants, ritual chants, and trial and error remedies refined over generations. You watch as she grinds a strip of tree bark into a fine powder, mixes it with honey, and folds the paste into a leaf pouch. It's meant for someone with a lingering cough. She explains softly that the bark tells the lungs to wake up, a phrase that sounds both poetic and oddly plausible. Nearby, a midwife prepares for a visit to a pregnant woman. She ties small charms of woven fiber, each with a pebble inside, and says they're meant to remind the baby of its path into the world. You can't help but smile at the idea of a newborn getting directions before arriving. The midwife laughs too, saying that even with directions, some babies take their time. A younger boy brings over a tiny clay jar filled with thick, dark sap. This, you learn, is used to patch cuts and keep away the ill-tempered spirits that slip into open wounds. Scholars still argue whether this reflects spiritual belief or an early understanding of infection and antiseptics. Whatever the truth, you watch a little girl scrape her knee, get a dab of the stuff, and trot off moments later like nothing happened. The healer pauses, holding up a strange concoction that looks like a bundle of twigs and shells bound together with fiber. She tells you it's a Fanafodi Gasi charm, a medicine for protection, especially during storms at sea. Fishermen never leave shore without one, and even skeptical young men, who laugh at the idea of spirits lurking in the waves, slip one into their canoes just in case. You think about yesterday's talk of pirates and decide you'd take every bit of luck you could get too. Then comes a more somber moment. A young mother sits before the healer, eyes downcast, holding a small bowl of rice. It's an offering, you're told, to appease the ancestors who may be causing an unexplained fever in her household. The healer sprinkles powdered leaves onto the rice, whispers a chant you can't quite follow, and tosses the mixture into the fire. Smoke curls upward, carrying the words into unseen spaces. Whether you believe in it or not, the ritual hushes the entire circle. The seriousness in their faces reminds you that medicine here isn't just about fixing bodies. It's about keeping peace with everything around you, visible and invisible. There's humor, too, woven between the reverence. A man with a sore shoulder complains that his wife's elbowing is worse than his injury. The healer smirks, hands him a heated stone wrapped in cloth, and tells him to stop being lazy. Everyone laughs, including the man, who mutters about not getting any sympathy in this village. As you sit there, you feel time stretch. There are no waiting rooms, no ticking clocks, just a slow, deliberate dance of leaves, honey, whispers, and hope. Remedies are tasted, smelled, pressed against skin, sometimes rejected with a shake of the head and a murmured, "No, the ancestors don't like that one today." You wonder how many of these plants modern medicine has yet to discover. How many remedies were passed along orally, at risk of vanishing like smoke if no one remembered. Historians still debate whether colonial rule erased more than it preserved in places like this. Watching the healer's hands, steady, wise, sure of their rhythm, you can't help thinking the world could use a bit of this patience, this respect for small, natural miracles. When you finally stand to leave, the healer presses a tiny amulet into your hand, a string-wrapped seed that smells faintly of cloves. "For sleep," she says simply, with a smile that feels like a blessing. You slip it into your pocket, already feeling like your dreams tonight might be quieter, safer, watched over by both plants and people who know more about the unseen than you ever will. After a quiet moment under the mango tree, you notice a splash of color fluttering in the breeze like a signal flag. A young girl darts past, her lamba wrap, long rectangular cloth, bright as a parrot's wing, dyed in streaks of red and gold. Intrigued, you followed the trail of laughter to a shaded spot where several women sit cross-legged with baskets full of roots, leaves, and seashells. Their hands stained every shade from sun-bleached yellow to deep ocean purple. Today, you're told, is a dyeing day, a time to refresh the village's stock of cloth and add new patterns for upcoming ceremonies. You settle beside them, and one woman hands you a bundle of undyed cotton, soft but plain. "Too white," she says, wrinkling her nose as if it were an insult. "We make it sing." They start with roots pulled from nearby forest paths, crushed with round stones until their juices bleed red-brown. Leaves from the indigo plant are mashed into a slurry that looks like swamp water but stains fingers blue almost instantly. And the most mysterious dye comes from small ocean snails, their shells spiraled like little galaxies. A deft twist and a squeeze, and a few drops of brilliant violet ooze out, so rare it's saved for elders or special courting cloths. Mainstream historians note that Madagascar's cloth trade linked African weaving, Austronesian fibers, and Indian Ocean dyes, but no book ever captures how alive it feels. The rhythmic grinding of roots, the earthy smell of boiling bark, and the laughter every time someone accidentally smudges a blotch on their cheek. A young boy runs by in a cloth freshly dipped, shouting, "I am the king of parrots," before tripping over his own feet. Nobody bothers correcting him. A king should have some dignity in falling. Patterns are laid out freehand, strips of fiber tied tight to make stripes or dots when the dye is washed away. One woman explains, with a knowing glance, that certain patterns mean certain things. This one shows you're unmarried and looking. That one says you've got eyes only for someone special. Another warns meddling neighbors to mind their own rice paddies. You realize clothing here isn't just protection from the sun, it's an entire conversation in color and weave. As a visitor, you're offered a turn. Your hands already stained from fetching water, you figure, why not? You dip a strip of cotton in the indigo vat, pull it out, and marvel as it shifts from dull green to brilliant blue as the air hits it. You joke that you've invented magic fabric, and one of the elders pats your arm kindly. "Magic's older than you think," she says, not even cracking a smile. Historians still argue whether the snails used for violet dyes were gathered locally or came with ancient traders from distant coasts. But right now, watching a grandmother and granddaughter crack shells with a rhythm like drumming fingers, you feel that arguments in dusty books miss the point. This isn't about trade routes, it's about passing something vivid and human from one pair of hands to another. Once dyed, the cloth is rinsed in fresh water, wrung out, and hung high between palms, flapping like festival flags. As the breeze catches them, you can't help but picture this whole village transformed during celebrations, every person draped in color, moving like a living mural under the stars. You say as much, and someone laughs, "Wait for the marriage dance," promising you'll see how bright the night can get. Before you leave, they wrap a newly dyed scrap around your waist, a patchwork of blue and earthy red. "Now you look less like a ghost," a girl teases. It feels like a compliment, even if it comes with giggles. You wander back toward the huts, cloth swishing at your legs, thinking about how in your world, clothes are often just fashion or function. Here, each thread, each color, is a tiny piece of identity, woven, dyed, and shared, carrying whispers of ancestors and promises for the future. And you have a sneaking suspicion that long after you leave this island, that splash of color on your waist will stay bright in your memory. By late afternoon, the sun softens, painting the village in honey-colored light. People begin to gather around the central fire pit again, this time not for a meal, but for stories. Kids shuffle closer, dragging woven mats and sitting cross-legged, wide-eyed with anticipation. Elders lean on carved sticks or sit with their arms wrapped around their knees, their faces glowing in the flicker of the flames. You're ushered to a good spot, close enough to feel the fire's warmth, but not so close you'll regret it when sparks fly. The first storyteller clears his throat dramatically, as if the entire world has to stop breathing for him to start. His voice rolls low and steady, words flowing like a calm river. Though you don't understand every syllable, a neighbor quietly translates when needed, whispering in your ear. Tonight's tale, you learn, is about the first lemur who learned to speak, a trickster spirit who borrowed human words just to steal more bananas. The kids giggle as the storyteller describes the lemur swaggering into a village, bargaining like a merchant, then vanishing with not just the bananas, but the merchant's hat as well. Historians say fadi, taboos, and moral lessons were often woven into Malagasy folktales, teaching kids where to tread carefully in life. You catch the lesson here, too. Never underestimate a clever thief, especially one who can talk his way out of trouble. Then the tone shifts as another elder, voice rasping like dry leaves, tells of a long-ago ancestor who struck a deal with the sea spirits. In exchange for safe voyages, he promised to always return a share of his catch to the water. One day, pressed by hunger, he forgot. That night, storms chased his canoe for 3 days until he begged forgiveness. To this day, the elder says, fishermen pour a little fish broth into the waves before eating, just to keep peace with the unseen. Scholars still debate whether this tradition came from spiritual belief or practical caution, a way to remind everyone never to take more from the ocean than needed. The fire crackles, smoke carrying the sweet, resinous scent of burning tamarind wood. Shadows dance across the faces of listeners who are half dreaming, half spellbound. A baby fusses softly, soothed by a lullaby that seems older than words themselves. A dog sniffs your feet, sighs heavily, and flops down beside you, like you're part of the family now. A young man takes his turn, clearly the comedian of the group. His story is about a chicken who outsmarted a crocodile by pretending to be a floating log. The The crocodile, fooled again and again, supposedly got so embarrassed it moved to another river entirely. The crowd roars with laughter, a few people wiping tears from their eyes. Someone mutters that maybe that's why the nearby river is safe to fish. It's free of humiliated reptiles. You think about yesterday's water run and silently thank that mythical chicken. As night deepens, the fire pops and hisses, a kind of background music for the rhythm of storytelling. You notice the stories aren't just entertainment, they're maps of the island's soul, charting what's safe, what's forbidden, what's funny, and what's sacred. Without writing, every tale is a library, stored in memory and passed on with gestures, mimicry, and laughter. Historians still argue whether these oral traditions stayed unchanged for centuries or shifted with every teller. Watching the storytellers now, adding exaggerated jumps, whispering suspenseful lines, teasing kids with a fake ending before delivering the real one, you're sure these stories evolve every time they're told. They're living things, as alive as the lemurs, the sea spirits, and yes, even the cunning chickens. By the time the final story drifts into the smoky night, your eyelids are heavy. The fire is down to glowing embers, a faint warmth against the cool sea breeze. Kids are curled against their mothers, elders yawn, and the last sparks float upward like little spirits heading to the stars. You think you could sleep right here, lulled by the soft rustle of palm leaves and the knowledge that in this village, stories guard the night as much as any wall could. Morning comes, warm and sticky, sunlight spilling over the village roofs like liquid gold. You're still rubbing sleep from your eyes when a group of women beckon you toward the river. They're laughing, balancing bundles of soapberry leaves and smooth gourds of water on their hips. Your host explains it's ritual bathing day, not just a matter of scrubbing off yesterday's sweat, but a way to reset body and spirit under the watchful eyes of river beings older than the village itself. You follow the path inland, past thickets of pandanus and mango trees heavy with fruit, until the air turns cooler, shaded by towering bamboo. The river lies ahead, a ribbon of silver dotted with rocks polished smooth by centuries of flow. The water looks inviting after days of sun and sand, yet nobody rushes in. There's a pause at the riverbank where everyone murmurs a greeting toward the water. One woman tosses a pinch of ground rice onto the current. For the Ranomasina spirits, she explains softly, so they know we come with respect. Historians still argue whether such offerings were remnants of ancient Austronesian animism or unique Malagasy tradition, but as you watch the water carry away the rice, it feels more like courtesy than superstition. You dip your toes, expecting the chill of mountain-fed streams. Instead, it's warm but fresh, sliding around your ankles like silk. The women begin lathering the soapberry leaves between their hands, creating a foam that smells faintly of citrus and wild herbs. They scrub methodically, hair undone, skin glistening in the sun-dappled light. You hesitate, awkward in your city clothes, until someone playfully splashes you, saying the spirits will think you're rude if you just stand there. Laughing, you wade deeper, trying to remember the last time bathing felt this much like freedom. Then come the warnings. One elder, face serious now, points toward a deeper pool downstream. Not there, she says, that's where the river spirits sit. You glance nervously, half expecting glowing eyes under the surface. She continues, explaining that those pools belong to Razana, ancestral presences who protect the river but can pull under disrespectful swimmers. Historians still debate whether such offerings were meant to keep kids away from dangerous currents. Whatever their origin, you stick to the shallows, just in case. As you rinse off, you notice a girl floating on her back, humming a tune you've never heard. The melody blends with the river's murmur, so gentle, you think you could drift to sleep right there. She says it's an old song for washing away heavy dreams. Another woman chimes in, joking that you probably have plenty of heavy dreams after trying to paddle a canoe yesterday. You grin sheepishly. News travels fast in this village. There's laughter again when a fish leaps from the water near you, startling you into a splash that soaks everyone nearby. The river spirits are teasing you, a boy declares solemnly, but the twinkle in his eye says he's already planning a bigger splash attack later. After a while, the bathing turns almost ceremonial. The women step out, squeeze water from their hair, and wrap themselves in fresh, brightly dyed lambas. Before leaving, everyone kneels briefly to touch the water's surface with fingertips, murmuring a thank you. You do the same, feeling oddly humbled, as if the river, the soapberry leaves, even the fish have done you a kindness that shouldn't be taken for granted. On the walk back, the air feels lighter. You're cleaner, sure, but it's more than that. It's as though some invisible weight has been rinsed away. Historians note that many Malagasy communities viewed rivers as living relatives, deserving of greetings and gratitude. After today, you start to believe that water here isn't just part of the landscape, it's part of the family. Back in the village, you catch a whiff of roasting yams from a nearby fire. Kids run past, still damp from their own river bath, shrieking with joy. And for a fleeting moment, you swear you feel the river's presence lingering on your skin. Not just the warmth of sun-dried droplets, but something older, deeper, a quiet companionship carried all the way back from the current. The sun is just beginning to dip toward the horizon when you hear a rhythmic thunk, 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 echoing from the far side of the village. Curious, you wander over and find a group of men and older boys stripping long stalks of bamboo and piling palm fronds high beside a bare patch of earth. They grin when they see you, hand you a coil of fiber rope, and announce it's building day. You quickly learn that erecting a hut here is less about blueprints and more about teamwork, memory, and just enough superstition to keep everyone honest. The frame is bamboo, light yet strong, bent and lashed together with braided plant fibers. One elder demonstrates how to test the bend. Press your weight just so, listen for a creak but not a crack. You try, and your bamboo groans like it's protesting your clumsy hands. Laughter erupts, but no one's mean about it. They simply show you the trick again until you get it right. Historians tell us that pre-colonial Malagasy houses were designed for airflow and mobility. Easy to build, easy to repair, easy to take apart if storms or conflicts forced relocation. You see that truth unfolding as each piece slots into place. No nails, no metal, just clever angles and knots that hold fast like magic. Someone jokes that if you build it wrong, the ancestors will come by at night and give the roof a good shake. Judging by the laughter, you're not sure if they mean metaphorically or literally. The roof comes next. Bundles of palm fronds overlapping like dragon scales, tied down layer by layer. You're handed a frond and told to weave it under and over a bamboo slat. The first one slips loose and flops onto your head like a lazy bird. "Strong hands, soft touch," says a young boy half your size, effortlessly tying his own knot while you fumble. You mutter that you've clearly chosen the wrong century to live in, and the boy grins, maybe just the wrong island. Every so often, someone steps back and squints at the hut, nodding or shaking their head. The adjustments are tiny, an angle shifted, a rope tightened, but they matter. In this coastal climate, a poorly tied knot could mean your roof sails away during the next monsoon. There's pride in every knot, every frond, every smooth curve of bamboo. This isn't just shelter, it's proof you know how to live with the wind, the rain, and the earth beneath your feet. And yet, for all the care, there's humor woven in. A boy climbs the frame pretending he's a tree lemur, making monkey noises until his grandmother shouts a good-natured warning about falling. A man claims he once built a hut so crooked the door rolled shut on its own every time the wind blew. You start to believe this isn't just construction, it's a chance for storytelling, teasing, and teaching all at once. By late evening, the skeleton of the hut stands firm, the roof layered thick, casting a broad patch of shade you wish you'd had earlier in the blazing sun. There's a sense of accomplishment, even though you contributed mostly wobbly knots and comedic relief. Your host pats you on the shoulder, saying you've done well enough that this roof probably won't fall in your sleep. You glance upward nervously, unsure if that's reassurance or foreshadowing. Historians still argue whether these huts were temporary homes or deeply symbolic spaces tied to family and ancestry. Tonight, watching everyone gather around the finished frame, proud yet casual, you think it's both. It's practical, a shelter you can build in a day, but it's also ritual. Every hut an echo of the first ones their ancestors built when they came to this island, carried on winds and waves from distant shores. As twilight deepens, the hut stands complete, smelling of fresh-cut bamboo and warm palm leaves. Someone lights a small fire nearby, and its glow paints the new walls gold. Kids crawl in and out of the doorway, testing the space, claiming imaginary bedrooms. You duck inside, feeling the cool air swirl through the gaps, hearing the soft creak of the structure settling into place. It's simple, yes, fragile by modern standards maybe, but as you sit on the packed earth floor, you can feel the weight of centuries in this light little home. A promise that as long as hands remember how to bend bamboo and weave palm leaves, no one here will ever truly be without shelter. The following day begins with the smell of roasting meat and the unmistakable sound of a cow's bell clinking gently near the edge of the village. Word spreads quickly. There will be a feast tonight, not for a birthday or a wedding, but for the ancestors. You're told this happens a few times each season, a way to feed the living and the unseen alike, to remind the departed that they are still part of every meal shared here. As the sun climbs, preparations begin in earnest. A group of men lead a zebu, the humped cattle so central to Malagasy life, toward a shaded clearing. Its horns are adorned with woven flowers, a mark of honor before it gives its life for the feast. You notice that everyone treats the animal with quiet respect. Jokes stop, voices soften. Even children, usually loud and chaotic, stand still, as if they understand this moment isn't about spectacle, but gratitude. Historians tell us that cattle held immense symbolic weight in pre-colonial Madagascar, more than just food or wealth. They were tied to lineage, ceremonies, and promises made to ancestors long gone. Watching this ritual unfold, you feel the weight of that history in every careful gesture, every murmured word. Women busy themselves preparing rice in enormous clay pots, stirring with wooden paddles longer than your arm. Spices fill the air, cloves, cinnamon bark, and wild pepper, mingling with the sharper scent of ginger being grated on smooth stones. Young boys run errands carrying gourds of water from the stream, while girls weave banana leaves into platters big enough to hold mountains of rice. And then comes the part that catches you by surprise, a quiet, almost private ritual before the feast begins. Small bowls of food are prepared and placed beneath a sacred tree at the edge of the village. People kneel, whispering to the earth as bowls are set down. You're told the words are thanks and invitations. Come eat with us, watch over us. Historians still argue whether the ancestors were believed to literally eat the offerings or simply enjoy the spirit of the meal, but here it's just the right thing to do. Back in the main clearing, fires crackle under makeshift grills of bamboo. The zebu meat sizzles slowly, releasing rich, savory smoke that winds its way through the huts. Your stomach growls, but you're warned with a wink that tasting anything before the elders do would earn you a scolding from both the living and the dead. You decide to wait. Children keep busy by grinding roasted peanuts into a thick paste for sauce, their little hands working the mortar with surprising skill. A boy offers you a turn, and you manage a few clumsy grinds before the paste sprays out like a nutty explosion. The children collapse in giggles, and you can't help laughing too, adding another blotch to your long record of culinary failures this week. As dusk approaches, the feast takes shape. Banana leaves are spread on the ground in neat rows, piled high with rice, fish, greens, and roasted meat, glistening with fat and spice. People gather in a wide circle, seating elders first, then everyone else by age and family line. Your host guides you to a spot toward the back, assuring you with a smile that you're honorary family for tonight. Before anyone eats, a hush falls over the crowd. The elder who welcomed you on your first day steps forward, holding a bowl of rice high toward the darkening sky. His voice rises and falls like a chant, speaking of gratitude, memories, and hope for seasons yet to come. The crowd murmurs responses, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat shared by 100 people. You feel goosebumps prickle your arms despite the heat of the fires. Finally, the meal begins. Hands, spoons, and strips of woven leaves pass food around with practiced ease. The zebu is tender, smoky, with a spice that lingers warmly on your tongue. The peanut sauce is thick, earthy, and somehow richer for having been pounded by laughing children. The rice, fluffy and fragrant, tastes like the very soul of this place. As you eat, you notice small bites of food set aside on leaves, later taken to the ancestor tree. Even in abundance, nothing is forgotten. The ancestors feast too, silent guests at every gathering. By nightfall, bellies are full, faces shine in firelight, and songs rise into the star-strewn sky. Some are slow, mournful melodies of memory. Others are fast, joyous tunes that have everyone clapping and swaying. A grandmother pulls you into a circle dance. You stumble through awkwardly, nearly tripping over your borrowed lamba cloth. Laughter follows you, kind and contagious, wrapping you in the warmth of a community where even clumsy feet are welcome. When the fire dies down and people drift toward their mats, you're left with the scent of spices in the air, the glow of embers, and the quiet certainty that tonight you shared not just food, but time, gratitude, and a thread to the unseen hands that built this village long before you ever dreamed of it. Morning mist hangs over the lagoon like a light blanket, softening the line between water and sky. Your host nudges you awake before the sun is fully up, grinning as if this hour is the most natural time in the world to be alive. "Fishing," he says, handing you a long, rough-hewn pole and a net coiled like a sleeping snake. You try not to groan too loudly. Apparently today you're trading sleep for survival skills. The beach is alive already. Dugout canoes, barely wider than your hips, rock gently in the shallows, ready for another day's work. Fishermen and women move about briskly, checking nets, tying small charms to the prows, murmuring words you half recognize as thanks to the sea. Historians say fishing was the backbone of many Malagasy coastal communities, providing not only food but trade goods that reached markets far inland. Watching the bustle now, it's easy to see why. This is more than a livelihood. It's the heartbeat of the place. You climb into a canoe and try to keep your balance as the paddles dip in rhythm. The air smells of salt and seaweed, layered with the faint sweetness of clove buds still clinging to someone's hair from yesterday's feast. The sun creeps higher, turning the water from slate gray to a shimmering sheet of silver. Your host shows you how to handle the net. Smooth toss, quick pull, keep your feet steady. You attempt it, and the net lands in an awkward plop that scares away any fish within a mile. A young boy laughs and says you fish like a tree branch. You mutter back that you're still evolving from one. The second try is better, but the only thing you catch is a piece of floating seaweed. The boy solemnly informs you that you've just caught dinner for ghosts, which somehow makes your failure sound like a good deed. As you float farther from shore, the water deepens to a green so clear you can see schools of fish darting below, flashing like coins in sunlight. You also notice a stillness to your companions when they pass certain stretches of water, a carefulness in how their paddles dip. One man points to the reed-choked edge of the lagoon and whispers, "Crocodiles." You glance nervously, scanning the murky shallows. Historians still argue whether crocodiles were common along every coast or mostly inland, but everyone here has stories. Your host tells you of a crocodile said to carry a grudge. A fisherman once stole its prey decades ago, and now it lurks, waiting to even the score. Whether you believe in vengeful reptiles or not, you find yourself keeping your arms firmly inside the canoe. The first real catch of the day comes from one of the elders, his throw precise, his pull smooth as breathing. A dozen silver fish thrash in the net, their scales scattering sunlight like shards of glass. There's a quiet satisfaction in the way he lays them in the canoe, no boasting, just a nod to the others. The younger fishers cheer softly, not for the catch itself, but for the balance it brings. Enough to feed a family, enough to trade, nothing wasted. As the morning wears on, you begin to get the rhythm. Throw, wait, pull, hope. You catch 2 fish, small but respectable, and you're applauded like you've just invented fishing altogether. The boy who mocked you earlier offers a solemn handshake, declaring you no longer a tree branch, maybe a bent stick. You accept the promotion proudly. By the time you paddle back to shore, the sun is high, the village awake and waiting. The day's haul is divided neatly, some for the cook fires, some for drying racks, some for trading later. A few fish are tossed back to the sea, a gesture your host says is for balance, an unspoken pact with the water to take only what's fair. As you sit on the sand, tired but oddly content, you realize fishing here isn't about luck or brute force. It's about rhythm, listening to the tide, reading the water, respecting what you can't see beneath the surface, and maybe, just maybe, keeping on good terms with crocodiles who never forget a slight. The sun dips low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, when you hear a rhythm unlike any you've heard before. It's not the workaday drumming that marks paddling strokes or the pounding of rice. This is lighter, faster, a beat that seems to float on the evening air like laughter turned into music. Your host grins knowingly. "Marriage dance," he says, tugging you toward the village clearing. "You will dance too." You already suspect this will end in personal embarrassment, but there's no escaping a crowd this determined. At the center of the clearing, a circle forms, lit by torches stuck into the sand and woven baskets filled with glowing coals. Women in brilliantly dyed lambas sway in graceful arcs, their wraps catching firelight like living embers. Men clap their hands in sync, their steps sharp but playful. It's courtship, you're told, but not solemn or stiff. This is a game, a conversation without words, where glances mean more than any declaration. Historians describe Malagasy marriage customs as intricate social dances, sometimes literal, sometimes metaphorical, but rarely do they capture the humor pulsing through it. Tonight you see it firsthand. A young man steps forward, miming exaggerated strength, as if to say, "I can fish enough for 10 families." A girl laughs and mimics him, lifting an imaginary zebu over her head. The crowd erupts in cheers and teasing whistles. And then you're pushed forward. A drumbeat quickens, the crowd claps expectantly, and you realize you have about 3 seconds to invent a move that won't make you a permanent legend of clumsiness. You try something that vaguely resembles dancing, a little shuffle, a hopeful spin. The crowd roars with laughter, but in a warm, delighted way, like you've just given them a gift of pure comedy. Someone shouts that you're dancing like a startled crab, and from the reaction, you suspect this may become your official village nickname. Your performance earns you a partner anyway, a kind-eyed young woman who steps forward, takes your hands, and guides you through the proper steps. The dance isn't about perfect footwork, you realize, but connection, matching rhythms, reading each other's smiles, teasing with near misses and playful spins. It's courtship, yes, but also storytelling, each pair weaving a new tale in time with the drums. The music shifts, slower now, a song carried on layered voices that rise like waves against the night sky. Couples sway closer, steps small and deliberate. You feel the sand under your bare feet, the faint pull of the ocean breeze, the thrum of drums blending with the sound of heartbeats, yours included, slightly panicked, but oddly exhilarated. Historians still argue whether these dances were strictly for choosing partners or more of a social ritual, a celebration of ties between families and clans. Looking around, you suspect both are true. Older couples laugh together on the edge of the circle, children weave in and out, pretending to be future dancers, and young people lock eyes, in moments that could mean maybe tomorrow, maybe forever. The music quickens again, ending in a joyful, stomping finale that has everyone clapping, laughing, and collapsing into each other's arms. You're pulled into a group hug that smells of sweat, ocean salt, and roasted yams from the evening cook fires. Even as an outsider, you're part of the circle now. Not a candidate for marriage, thankfully, but a companion in shared joy, bound for, tonight at least, by music and laughter. When the drums fade and torches burn low, you linger on the edge of the clearing, watching the dancers disperse in pairs and clusters. The air hums with quiet conversation and hints of promises made. One old woman pats your hand, grinning. "Not a crab forever," she says, eyes twinkling, "but we'll remember." You have no doubt you will too. Not just the dance, but the warmth of a community that finds joy in every misstep, turning even your clumsy shuffle into part of their living, laughing story. The next day dawns with a different kind of heat. Not just the sun rising heavy and bright, but the dry warmth that cracks the earth underfoot and fills the air with a faint smell of dust and smoke. Your host hands you a damp cloth to drape over your shoulders and says simply, "Fire Day." You raise an eyebrow until you see people already gathering at the edge of the fields with bundles of dried grass, sticks, and clay pots of water. Today, you learn, is when parts of the land are deliberately burned to make way for new planting. The practice is old, older than any living memory here, a cycle repeated for generations. Clear, burn, nourish, grow. Historians write about Tavi, the traditional slash-and-burn agriculture of Madagascar, noting that it sustained communities long before European plows arrived. But the books don't tell you how alive and cautious the process feels, like handling both a friend and a dangerous animal at once. Everyone works together, setting small, controlled fires in patterns that eat away dry grass but leave certain shrubs and trees untouched. Smoke curls upward in thin white threads, not the choking clouds you imagined. A man explains that the ash makes the soil tired today but strong tomorrow, feeding yams, taro, and rice when the rains return. There's an art to the timing, he says, a rhythm with the seasons that can't be rushed or delayed without angering both the land and the ancestors watching over it. You help drag fallen branches into piles, trying not to trip as you dart between slow-moving flames. Your modern instincts scream danger, but the villagers move with calm precision, knowing exactly how far fire will creep, when to stamp out a stray lick of flame, when to let it smolder. A young boy grinning at your tense expression tells you that the land only burns fast when it's angry. So smile, or the fire will chase you. You force a grin, earning a belly laugh from everyone nearby. Later, when the fields cool, people dig with short-handled tools, turning over darkened soil still warm to the touch. Women drop seeds into neat rows while men prepare irrigation channels from the nearby stream. You try your hand at planting yams and manage to bury one so deep you're told it might emerge in another lifetime. They tease you gently, saying the ancestors will appreciate your generosity to future generations. The smells of this work linger long after the flames die. Roasted earth, faint wood smoke, and the sweet tang of singed wild herbs. You catch yourself thinking that modern agriculture often feels mechanical, disconnected. Here, the process is raw and intimate. The fire is not just a tool, but a conversation with nature. Sometimes polite, sometimes heated, always with a touch of negotiation. Historians still debate whether Tavi was sustainable in the long run, especially as populations grew. But here, in this small coastal village, it's less about debate and more about respect. Burn too much, take too much, and the land will answer in kind, with poor harvests or stubborn weeds. Every decision feels heavy with accountability to people, ancestors, and the island itself. By midday, the hardest work is done. Someone passes you roasted yams fresh from an earth oven dug nearby, still steaming and sweet. You eat slowly, savoring the soft, smoky bite, feeling it settle like comfort after the sweat and heat of the morning. The villagers sprawl in patches of shade, sharing food, gossip, and the occasional dramatic retelling of how you almost let a flame sneak past you. You're pretty sure they're exaggerating, but it's funnier this way. As the sun begins to dip, you walk the edge of the newly cleared field. The charred ground looks stark now, blackened lines tracing the day's work, but there's a quiet promise in it. Soon enough, green will sprout again, rice stalks swaying in the wind, yams fattening underground, life returning with the rhythm of rain and sun. You glance back at the village, smoke from cook fires mingling with the last wisps of the field burn, and you realize you've witnessed not destruction, but a kind of renewal, older than any calendar. Fire here is not feared, but understood, guided, even befriended. Just another member of the community, wild yet trusted, helping to feed everyone who calls this land home. Your final dawn in the village arrives quietly, with the kind of muted light that feels more like a whispered farewell than a blazing sunrise. Roosters crow, waves lap at the shore, and somewhere a child giggles in their sleep. But the usual morning bustle is softened. Your host hands you a small woven basket and a lamba cloth folded neatly inside. "For your journey," he says simply, his voice kind, yet tinged with something you can't quite name. Breakfast is light today, steamed rice cakes drizzled with honey, slices of mango, and warm tea made from fragrant local leaves. The conversation is easy, teasing, but you sense a little pause before each laugh, as if everyone is aware this is the last meal you'll share for now. One grandmother pats your shoulder and says you've eaten like a real villager this week, which you decide to take as the highest possible praise. Afterward, you wandered to the ancestor tree one last time. Small bowls from last night's feast still sit at its roots, a few grains of rice glistening in the morning dew. You bow your head, murmuring thanks in awkward, borrowed words. Whether the ancestors understand your accent or not, you hope the sentiment reaches them, that you've been grateful for every lesson, every laugh, every bite of smoky rice they allowed you to borrow from their world. The village gathers by the beach as you prepare to leave. Someone slips a necklace of carved wooden beads over your head, explaining it's to remind you of the island breeze wherever you go. Another child pushes a tiny clay charm into your palm, whispering that it will keep crocodiles away just in case you meet their cousins. Laughter ripples through the crowd, easing the lump forming in your throat. Historians write about trade winds carrying ideas and goods across Madagascar's coasts long before French ships ever arrived. But what you feel today is something harder to record: connection. This village, this week, this way of life isn't just history, It's living memory, passed from one hand to another, like the gifts they're sending with you now. Your canoe is ready, rocking gently in the shallows. You step in carefully, recalling your early days of clumsy balance, and the villagers cheer softly when you don't immediately tip over. A boy cups his hands around his mouth and shouts, "Bent stick forever!" The crowd laughs, and you can't help joining in, accepting the nickname like an honorary title. As you push off, the village slowly recedes, a scatter of huts, bright cloths fluttering on lines, smoke from morning fires curling upward. You hear a final drumbeat from the shore, not urgent, just a gentle rhythm to send you on your way. The water glitters in the rising sun, and you feel the breeze tugging at your hair, carrying with it scents of salt, clove, and earth still warm from yesterday's fires. Historians still argue about what life here was truly like centuries ago, how much was preserved, how much was altered by time and outside hands. But you know what you felt. A week lived close to the rhythms of tides, stories, and shared work. A place where every meal honors both the living and the gone, where a river has spirits, a fire can be a friend, and laughter is a language that needs no translation. You glance down at the basket in your lap, a mango, a folded lamba, a charm smelling faintly of cloves, and realize these aren't just gifts, they're reminders that you've been part of something rare and precious, if only briefly. And as the canoe glides farther into the open water, you promise yourself that no matter how far or fast the modern world pulls you, a part of you will always paddle back here in dreams. The shoreline becomes a blur, the village shrinking into memory. The sound of the paddle dipping into the water grows steady, hypnotic. The sun rises higher, but the warmth feels softer, wrapping you in comfort instead of blazing heat. You lean back slightly, eyes heavy, letting the rhythm of waves lull you. The ocean smells faintly sweet, like salt mingled with fruit, and the world seems to hum in a low, soothing note. Your thoughts drift like the canoe itself, back to frogs singing under starlight, fish darting under nets, the laughter of dancers circling a fire, the weight of warm yams in your hands, and the gentle press of a charm given for safe dreams. The island is still there behind you, timeless and alive, waiting patiently for the day you return. And as the canoe rocks in the calm water, you close your eyes, knowing that for now you can carry this rhythm, this slow heartbeat of a Malagasy village before history changed it, into your sleep. A story to return to again and again, whenever you need a place where time moves kindly and the air tastes like mangoes and salt.